Well, let's do that right now. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. I'd like to welcome you to one of the last webinars in this year's National Biodiversity Teach-In. The topic we have today is sort of a, it's on the surface it seems very simple and clear cut, but when you start to dig into it, you find out that there's a lot of layers of complexity to it. Before we go any further, let's do a few introductions. Allison, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Allison.
And I'm Pam Otto. We work here at the Hickory Knolls Discovery Center in St. Charles, Illinois. We're a nature center that serves the local, actually regional community. And one of our big educational messages, and what we'd like to talk to you today about, is what makes a pet, and what makes a wild animal, and how you can tell the difference between the two. Now, we brought our friend Barry here today. He's a bear, and I think most of us would agree that bears do not make good pets. We also have our friend Peter Rabbit. If we can see him here. Petey makes an awesome pet. Peter was bred to be a pet, and in fact, that's how we ended up getting him, was through a pet rescue service. But, you know, what we found in our work here at Hickory Knolls is that there is some confusion. There's some very blurry lines about what animals, what the role of a pet animal is, and what function wildlife serves, especially in cases where people try to make a wild animal into a pet. Now, again, bears, not such a good pet, but Allison, let's visit with our friend Billy for a minute. Okay. We have here at Hickory Knolls, we have a number of live animals on display. None, I should stress, none were actually taken from the wild, but some of them do live in the wild here in Illinois. We're about to meet our friend Billy, the bull snake. Now, bull snakes are a native species here in Illinois. Not so much up here in St. Charles, which is in the northern part of the state, but as you go down towards central Illinois, my uncle is a farmer in central Illinois, and bull snakes have been his friend for decades. They're wonderful at rodent control. Let's see if we can get him up here. There he is. Allison is holding 8 feet of bull snake right now. You know, bull snakes, frankly, don't make real good pets. They're not often sold in the pet trade. Their best role is fulfilled out in the wild. Billy, however, was bred in captivity and then was given to us by his owner when the owner was leaving the country, couldn't take him with. The owner was actually going to let Billy go. Think about that for a minute. Billy was bred in captivity. In fact, one of his parents was an albino, so he carries that gene, which probably wouldn't serve a wild snake all that well. I think they would probably get consumed pretty quickly. And the other issue, and the bigger thing that we'll probably delve into today, is the fact that once an animal is living in captivity, there you go, they start to acquire certain makeup inside of their bodies, certain types of bacteria. You know, bacteria often has a bad name, but our bodies are full of bacteria, and a lot of good bacteria live in our bodies. But the things that would live inside of a captive animal like Billy would probably not be found in animals in the wild. Would you say that's true, Allison?
Yeah. I mean, some are similar, but definitely they adapt to their habitat.
Yeah, and you know, Billy, I mentioned that bull snakes are good rodent control snakes. In the wild, Billy would be eating what? Ground squirrels, chipmunks,
mice,
and they too have their own unique makeup on the inside, made up of wild strains of different bacteria and things like that. Billy eats a pretty steady diet of frozen foods that we buy special for him. He eats what? Rats,
mice, and chicks.
Yeah, all purchased from a rodent food supply house. That their coworkers always love it when we get a delivery that says fresh meat on the outside and rodents on the inside. But so Billy's internal makeup is now carrying different types of bacteria that would not be present in the wild. If we were to one day decide we didn't want Billy anymore and would think, oh gosh, what farmer couldn't use some more rodent control, let's just let him go, that would be bad on a number of levels. For one,
he wouldn't really, his instincts might kick in, but the bacteria that wild mice and viruses that they carry can negatively affect Billy.
Right, yeah, and that's the instinct is another important fact to bring up. And Billy's about 10 years old, and he's been eating frozen and thawed out food for 10 years. Sometimes he will still strike at it, especially if we jiggle it and make it look like it's alive. But, I don't know how aware he is of his surroundings anymore. He might still be able to go hunting in the wild, but he might not be aware of predators that could then sneak up on him.
Yeah, he's not used to having that threat.
Yeah, well, and granted, he's 8 feet long, so it would take a special kind of predator to want to take on Billy.
Well, I've seen hawks take on
over
snakes that high.
That's true, yeah. Hawks eat a lot of snakes, and they've got strong talons, they've got strong muscles in their feet. Yeah, I would guess. And the other thing, Billy has gotten used to being able to just kind of eat at his leisure. He doesn't have to hurry. Whereas a wild snake, anytime they're feeding on something, they also have to have that extra sense that something could be trying to eat them very shortly. So Billy, I think it's safe to say, is never going to be living in the wild. Lives a pretty good life. You can see he's pretty at ease. He's not squirming. He's not behaving at all like a wild snake would.
Not acting defensively. He's pretty used to human handling.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. The name bull snake, it comes from the way these animals snort when they're disturbed. And the only time we can get a snort out of Billy is if he happens to be going into a shed. Have you ever heard him do that?
No, I haven't.
It really gets your attention. It gives a pretty good snort. But even though he looks wild, he isn't living in captivity. He's going to remain in captivity. Now, Peter Rabbit, who we saw at the start of our webinar, and I don't know where he's gone to now. He's around the room somewhere. But Peter Rabbit, now the rabbits that are sold as pets, they're a completely different species than the rabbits that you would see in your yard. Cottontail rabbits are a completely different genus and species than the bunnies that are sold in pet stores and places like that. Peter is definitely a pet variety. He's called a Palomino breed of rabbit. However, he was picked up wandering loose. We don't know his full story. Like I said, we got him from a rescue group, but he was found in somebody's yard. They recognized he wasn't a wild animal, so they called animal control. Animal control picked him up. They held him for about 10 days, waiting for someone to claim him. Nobody did, so then he went into the rescue group, and that's how we got him. We've had him for close to 10 years, too. Not all bunnies are that lucky. I can tell you a story from, gosh, Allison, this is probably 7 or 8 years ago. We were hosting our summer nature camps, which we do as much as we can outdoors, and we were visiting a local forest preserve week after week. And every time we were there, we would catch a glimpse of this absolutely gorgeous rabbit. not a cottontail. Not that cottontails aren't gorgeous, but I mean, you can clearly see this was a pet. Yeah, a domestic bunny that somebody had let loose at the forest preserve. It was very shy though, and we couldn't get close to it until maybe, I don't know, halfway through the summer, and we were finally then able to capture it. By this point, the poor thing, it hadn't gotten eaten, which was kind of remarkable, but it had it caught something. It was very kind of funny because I'm a little drippy today too. But it had a lot of stuff dripping out of its nose. Its eyes were all crusty, which was probably the only reason we were able to capture it. It just wasn't feeling well. So we got it, brought it back to our offices, called a rabbit rescue. We had arranged a time for a pickup for them to come and get this rabbit. Unfortunately, the rabbit didn't survive long enough. It died overnight. Now, in that case, a couple different factors are at play. Hey, Bill. One, the rabbit wasn't equipped to, we were talking earlier about internal makeup. It didn't have whether it was the antibodies or the immune system that was required to fight off the germs it would encounter in the wild. Secondly, it could very well have been running around infecting the wild bunnies, which is a very serious problem. So that story had a not so happy ending. Got a third bunny story, and this too, Allison. This was a few years back, but we have a local park here in St. Charles called Pearson Creek Fen. It's located off of a state highway, and it's funny, it's not remote in the sense that it's far away from civilization. I mean, it's right, close to downtown St. Charles. But when you go into the park, you have to drive down a ramp, and the parking area isn't really visible from the highway that's up above. And we find a lot of weird stuff there that people dump. We find, unfortunately, a lot of trash. Several years ago, I found a ferret there. Really? I got out of my car. The first thing I see is two little dishes, dish of water, dish of food. Well, that's kind of weird. And then this little animal comes running out of the weeds and was like a cat, rubs around your ankle. Yeah, just wanted attention. There's a ferret. Yeah, this poor thing had been dumped. So I picked it up. Again, there's always that ever-present question of disease. Didn't want it to infect any of the wild animals that live at the fen. And I ended up taking that one up to a animal shelter just up the road from the fen. But a couple of years back, I got a text from one of our park safety officers, and it was a picture of a box with 8 bunnies in it, 8 domestic rabbits. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where is this at? It's at Pearson Creek Fen. Somebody had driven down there with these bunnies. I guess they didn't want anymore, so they let them, I guess, what they thought, and what so often people think is when they're letting something go, they're giving it its freedom.
Second chance,
Yeah. Which,
it's good intentions, but most likely those bunnies aren't used to the predators that are in the area again. They'll probably get picked up pretty easily by hawks, coyotes, and even foxes.
Right. Yeah, that it's a very romantic notion. We're going to give it its freedom. But at the same time, if it's not used to freedom, and it's had everything it could possibly want in its life in captivity, that freedom could actually end up being kind of a death sentence.
Yeah.
And in this, we never did solve where these these bunnies came from, but some of them were missing some parts. One had part of a foot missing, another one was missing an ear. The good news, and this is a story with a happy ending, a local pet shop that has a good relationship with the vet took the bunnies in, got them fully vetted, and made sure none of them were sick. The ones that had wounds were taken care of, and actually those went first as far as adoptions. People really wanted to help these poor little bunnies. So all 8 of the rabbits ended up getting homes, but they could have made the wild animals they're sick. They could have gotten themselves sick. They could have hopped up the hill and run across the road and gotten hit by a car, because again, that's not something
Not used to traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can start to see how these lines can get a little blurry. How about Alison? I'll hold Billy. If you wanna, I don't know if
Yeah.
you guys wanna.
There you go.
Let's take a look at our corn snake friend. So something like a cat or a dog. Not to say that people don't let them go, but we find those less frequently than we do some of these more less traditional pets, if we should call them that. Billy, as I mentioned, wild species, not often kept as a pet. Now, what Alison just brought over, their friend Timmy. Timmy is a corn snake. We will often have people tell us that they were out hiking our trails and that they ran into a corn snake on a path. That would be really, well, in a natural history sense, it would be unusual because corn snakes don't really live in northern Illinois. Their natural range is the southeastern United States. I think there's a small population. I think it's still under dispute whether this is a natural population or if somebody moved corn snakes to Illinois, years and years and years ago. But there were 2 counties in southwestern Illinois that were thought to at one time host corn snakes in the wild. Okay. But they're not, northern Illinois is not part of their natural range. The thing is, sometimes we do find corn snakes in the wild because people let them go. The other thing is that we have some native species. You can see how Timmy's got spots on his back and spots on his belly. And Billy has spots on his back and spots on his belly. And if you're not really into snakes, you might think, well, a snake is a snake. And what's the difference if, I let a snake go? Because, snakes live in the wild and, again, we can give this snake its freedom. But once again, we will be looking at a situation where that snake probably wouldn't survive long, or if it did, it might be slithering around infecting wild snakes.
Other wild animals, and even some snakes actually eat other snakes. So this guy could be carrying something, and another snake could come and eat it, and then catch whatever the snake had. That's
an awesome point, Alison. Yeah. In fact, right here in our park at Hickory Knolls, we have a type of snake that eats other snakes. It's called milk snake. We have eastern milk snakes in this area. Milk snakes and their very close cousins, the king snakes, that's kind of their claim to fame, is they eat other snakes. So they could, ingest things that aren't good for them. It could end up dying as a result of it. And it's all because somebody let something go that they shouldn't have. I don't know if anybody could hear. In fact, it's now kind of stopped funking around. Another group of animals that are often kind of misconstrued, would that be the right word, as being pets, or be okay to take a wild one and make it into a pet, are turtles. We're coming up now on turtles will soon be coming out of hibernation. One of the first things they do, females, is they will head out and mate and lay eggs. And as we get further on into the summer, in our area, it's usually around August or so, we start finding baby turtles. And people pick these baby turtles up, and they think, I'm going to save it because this baby turtle can't possibly survive on its own. Never mind that turtles have been around for 200 million years and doing quite well on their own. But people will pick up a baby turtle, and they'll keep it for a while. Baby turtles, they're
really tiny.
Yeah, the size of a quarter or $50. And they really do look defenseless. And it's true, a lot of them do get eaten. But that's one of the jobs they fulfill out in the wild. They serve as a food source for other animals. Well, people who pick these turtles up and decide to keep them as pets for a while figure a lot of times they think, well, when it gets too big, I can just let it go again. But just what we've been saying all along, okay, even if it was a wild animal at one time, once you bring it into captivity, you're just,
exposing it to a lot of different bacteria, a lot of different viruses that aren't found in the wild.
Yeah. So even though it was once wild, once it's in captivity, you can't recross that line. You'd be doing a lot more harm than good. Alison, who are you holding here?
So this is the Painted. His name is the Painted.
Yeah, we never got around to naming it. Here at Hickory Knolls, in the lobby of our nature center, we have an indoor turtle pond, and it's dedicated to the conservation of an endangered species of turtle we have in Illinois called the Blanding's turtle. And from the outset, that turtle pond was for Blanding's turtles only, just for the reasons we've been talking about. We don't want to take any chances of sharing germs or diseases between species, and we want to make sure, as Blandings are endangered, we want to make sure that they, have the healthiest possible environment. Well, one day, when we weren't looking, somebody must have come in with a box, because we found the box in the garbage later, but they let the Painted go in our Blandings turtle pond. Now, I don't know, this might be hard to see with this camera, but we can put her up close. Oh, nice. Okay, can you see right there? Painted has quite a divot in her shell. Again, we don't know the full story, but we think probably what happened was somebody rescued her. I'm guessing she might have gotten hit by a car. Happens a lot.
It does look like that damage.
Yeah.
At a very young age, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it's pretty well repaired, but and a great testament to how these animals can heal themselves. But whoever picked this turtle up and maybe help nurse it back to health, and realize aquatic turtles are a lot of work. They're messy.
Yes.
They eat their food in the water, so whatever you're feeding them, there's going to be bits and pieces that are going to be floating around and starting to decompose. They don't just eat in the water, they also do other things in the water, if you know what I mean. And that, again, is passing along germs and bacteria and things like that. Needless to say, the ecologist that we work with on the Blandings turtle program was not real thrilled when the Painted showed up. But by the time we found her, we're assuming that as soon as she hit the water, she probably started shedding disease, bacteria. Yeah, because none of the turtles in the pond have gotten sick. Everybody's remained healthy, but they are probably now carriers of the various bacteria or even viruses that the Painted may have been exposed to. So once the Blandings turtles that are at Hickory Knolls, a lot of them will be entering into a breeding program as they get older. We're going to have to make sure that they get pretty fully vetted and given whatever medicines that they need so that they're not then going to contaminate other populations. So, but it's a really tough line for people to, because this is a painted turtle, Midland painted turtle, which is the species that's native here in northern Illinois. They do live in the wild. We have very large populations of painted turtles. So if someone has one as a pet and they look at it and they think, well, painted turtles live here.
Yeah, can just let it
I kept it for a while. I'm going to let it go. You really can't cross back and forth over those lines. I said when Alison and I were setting up, we said we're not going to get too technical, and we're not super technical people. But I did bring a sheet here. It's a protocol sheet that was developed by the partners in amphibian and reptile conservation, and it's a list of things to do that wildlife biologists will follow when they're handling animals in the wild. It says disinfection to minimize risk and spread of chytridomycosis and ranavirus. Those are the two biggest threats to our local reptiles and amphibians. And they could, she could be loaded with rhinovirus right now. You know, she's healthy, but she could be a carrier. The chytrid fungus is more of an issue with our amphibians, and we don't have a live amphibian to share with you today, but they're, as a group, a very threatened group of creatures because of their skin is very permeable, and so who among us doesn't want to catch a toad when you see one? You want to pick it up and hold it. Just holding a toad in your hand without gloves on, you could be introducing disease into that animal's biology, internal makeup, because you don't know what you have on your hands. All the herpetologists, the scientists that work with reptiles and amphibians, always wear gloves now in the field, and it doesn't stop there. They use a lot of bleach. Let's see. They've got antivirals. They've got alcohols. All of these things are used to help disinfect. Now, it's not used on the animals themselves, but it's used in all the equipment.
The equipment, yes.
Well, in fact, Alison, I know you've got some field experience working. Yeah, let's put the painted back. Probably start clunking around again. But Alison works here at Hickory Knolls in the off season, but half the year she's out in the field working for the U.S. Forest Service. And some of the animals you've surveyed?
I've surveyed a lot of raptors, including eagles, goshawks, the northern spotted owl, bumblebees, which are a lot of fun. Just a lot of variety of wildlife, including flying squirrels, chipmunks.
Yeah, well, I remember some of the stories you were telling us about trying to handle these different creatures and keeping yourself safe.
Yes, especially when handling small mammals like rodents, especially the chipmunks. We try to wear rubber gloves, and because they carry the hantavirus, and they also have something leptospirosis, which is a kind of like a flu that you can catch from the droppings of rodents. So,
I know that's something that's always on the list when I get my dogs and cats vaccinated. Leptospirosis is something that they need to get vaccinated against.
Yeah, I've known a few people who have actually contracted it because they work with small mammals, and they say it's the worst kind of flu you can ever get.
Man. Yeah. Well, and again, this was a long, long time ago, but I remember a kid when I was growing up who had a pet chipmunk. Yeah, not great for the chipmunk, not great for the kid. It was a very cute little chipmunk.
Oh yeah, they are very cute.
But it didn't work out well. It didn't have a happy ending. But it's that's a great example. I would say chipmunks are just as cute, maybe even cuter than some of the rodents you can buy in the pet store. Hamsters, gerbils, guinea pigs.
Yeah.
But to take one indoors, you're not only kind of dooming that animal, but you can be putting yourself at risk as well.
Yeah, they carry. I know chipmunks especially carry a lot of fleas.
Yeah.
And fleas can be carrier of some.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Nasty stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we didn't even get into the whole parasite thing. A lot of animals who have lived in the wild. In fact, that was the first thing we did when we looked. We didn't know when the painted turtle showed up in our turtle pond. Where did she come from? The first thing we did was we checked her for ticks.
Yes.
Because turtles oftentimes they have ticks on their bodies, and the ticks are also disease carrying.
The major
parasites.
Yeah, the major disease that they carry is the Lyme disease.
Yeah, and we didn't want to make ourselves sick. We didn't want to make the other turtles sick. But there's just lots of facets, lots of sides to this. What you'd think would be a pretty simple thing, and it goes on too. I remember getting a phone call, and it started off very innocently. A woman She was actually a secretary at a local grade school. And she said, do crayfish live in the Fox River? The Fox River is the river we have running through the middle of our town. And I, well, yeah, sure, yeah. But I could tell there was a little bit more to the story, so I said, so why do you ask? And, well, it turns out, I believe it was the 5th graders at that school were studying crayfish.
Okay.
And the teacher had ordered a big box of crayfish from a biological supplier, live crayfish. And as the things oftentimes go in classrooms, they weren't going to have time to finish the crayfish unit with the live crayfish. So they were going to let them go in the Fox River. Now, just in Illinois, there are, I believe, 23 different types of crayfish, and there are some species that have been introduced that are very disruptive to local ecosystems. This happened to be one of them. What they had ordered for their classroom were called Louisiana swamp crayfish.
Okay.
So Louisiana, not Illinois. Illinois, not Louisiana. It's actually a popular species for eating. If you ever go to a restaurant and order crawdads, that's usually what you end up with. They're pretty large crayfish, but it could have been disastrous if they had introduced this box. I think there was about 30 of them in there, and they were just concerned about helping these creatures that had spent a week in the school office in a box on wet newspapers and aquatic plants. And it was only because the conversation continued past the crayfish live in the Fox River. But it's, what we ended up doing was we kept a few and put them in our fish tanks, and then we ended up freezing the rest. So freezing is actually a fairly painless form of euthanasia that we can do in creatures like that. Deb, the turtle, we have a question from Glenview. The turtle, the painted, and again, I don't know if you can hear her over there, we checked her for ticks. She did not have any. And that kind of supports our hypothesis that she'd been living in captivity for a while. For a wild turtle to show up in our nature center in the middle of summer without any ticks would be kind of unusual. Most turtles do have a tick or two on them at some point. In fact, if you see turtles basking, a lot of times on rocks, not only are they soaking up UV rays from the sun, helping with their calcium processing, but they are also trying to dry their skin out enough to get rid of some of those ectoparasites that could be giving them problems down the line. You can take Billy away. Yeah, at this time, I know we've got a couple of questions here. If anybody else has any questions they'd like to type in, we'd be glad to answer them. Ticks will feed really anything that has blood. Can be a source of food for a tick. Leeches are another common blood-consuming animal. Turtle didn't have any leeches on her either. Oh, that's good. But ticks are found on turtles as well as snakes in our area. You can sometimes find ticks beneath the scales of some of our local snakes. If there aren't any other questions, that's a good question. The question is, was the ferret the weirdest pet or thing you found? It's up there, but even the weirder with ferret is it's not the only ferret we found. I found 2 different ferrets over my career working in nature centers. And again, it doesn't happen as often with cats and dogs because they are, what we call the traditional pets. Mm-hmm. But we do occasionally find, in fact, Peggy Doty, who was a speaker at the National Biodiversity Teach-In last week. And she gave a presentation. One of her dogs was found somebody locked it in an outhouse in one of their preserves. Yeah, so it does happen occasionally. I can't say that, we would never, turn up, but ferrets are a little bit off to the side of, the traditional spectrum of pets. The first ferret I found, the one I mentioned at Pearson Creek Fen, it had a sort of a growth on its chin, and I believe that could have been why it was let go. Sometimes people find that they can't afford to care for a pet anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a very real situation, and that's why we have so many rescue groups.
As a front desk person, I work front desk and also take care of the animals. I get a lot of calls about people wanting to donate reptiles. A lot of calls about people wanting to donate reptiles, especially turtles, because they don't realize that this tiny little thing grows up to something this big and needs more space. But also, turtles and reptiles live a very long time. I mean, our box turtles, they're what, 40 years old?
Yeah, 40, yeah. 50, yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, Allison. Yeah, another part of our education mission is, yes, okay, if you want a snake as a pet, that's awesome. If you want a turtle as a pet, go for it. But be aware it's a lifetime commitment, especially for turtles. Now, snakes, with the improvements in diet and husbandry techniques, we're looking at an animal that's going to live 20 or 30 years. Turtles, as you mentioned, box turtles. We have 3 box turtles here at the center that are probably all in their 40s. I have a pet box turtle at home that I've had for almost 40 years, and I'm guessing he was 40 when I got him. Yeah, it's definitely something that we try to help, maybe stave off some of the problems by making sure people make an informed pet decision. Yeah, ferret, I would say, is probably one of the oddest things, and it did happen twice. Another great question, do coyotes or birds of prey create more risk to pets? Pets that are outdoors and unattended are going to be at risk.
Yes, that is true.
No matter what is around them, they could be hit by a car. The whole pets being eaten by coyotes thing, I think the media loves to play up that. I mean, that's a very gripping headline if they say, yeah, poodle got eaten by a coyote. Coyotes, they will prey on pets for food in instances where they don't have a lot of other choices. Probably the bigger thing, though, and that's why we always see a spike in coyote attacks in the wintertime, as we get into the new year, usually January or so. That's the start of the coyote breeding season. And coyotes look at pets, especially dogs, as threats to their territory. So they will attack, they'll carry away, especially smaller dogs, because they're trying to clear their territory of any potential threats to the litters that they know they'll be having come spring. The birds of prey, I suppose there's the occasional, I have heard occasionally of hawks or owls dive bombing pets. In fact, I had a friend who was trying to tame a feral cat, living in her backyard, and the cat was just gone one day. And you think an owl probably got it. It was a small cat.
Yeah, it actually happened this summer out in Oregon. Our hydrologist had a cat we let in and out once in a while, and it just never came back one day. And they're thinking the local owl must have grabbed. Yeah. So the thing about pets too is that it's our responsibility to look out for their well-being. So if they're going to be outdoors, we should be there with them. Cats running loose, just not a good idea. Bad for the cat, bad for local bird populations. Boy, I forget the figure. It's in the millions of songbirds and bird species that are consumed by feral cats.
and it's a growing problem. I'm sure a lot of communities have these groups. I know we have one here in St. Charles. It's called ARC, Adopt Adopt a River Cat, I think is what it stands for. But what they do is they will capture feral cats and spay or neuter them. So in a way that, I mean, that is helping to minimize future populations, but it doesn't really do anything to save the things that released and neutered cat is going to be eating. Now another good question, how many eggs do turtles lay on average? Depends on the species. And you know, I mentioned the Blandings turtles. That's the species we have in our turtle pond out in the lobby. One of the reasons they're endangered is they have a very slow reproductive rate. They may lay only 2 eggs a year. They can do up to maybe 20, but that would have to be under very optimal conditions, and things aren't so good for Blandings turtles right now. They, as a species, they have some habits that aren't good for living in crowded areas like suburban Chicago. They like to walk a lot. You can't really walk anywhere around here without getting hit by a car or a truck or something. So unfortunately, a lot of Blandings turtles have been hit by cars. A lot of painted turtles get hit by cars, and a lot of snapping turtles get hit by cars. But a painted turtle, they can lay 20 or more eggs in the season. Snapping turtles, they can lay 80 or 100 eggs over a season. And snappers, they will go and create several nests. So if something happens to one, a big problem with turtle eggs, turtles dig a hole in the ground and they lay their eggs down in underneath the surface of the soil, and then they just leave them. They don't sit around. They don't keep an eye on them. They're not.
They don't guard them.
They're not. Yeah, not. Once the eggs are laid, mom's duties are done. So that scent of those freshly laid eggs is a very powerful attractant to a lot of different kinds of animals. Skunks, possums, fox, coyote, raccoon. All of our common local mammals can dig up those nests and eat the eggs. So, a clutch of 20 might disappear, but if that snapping turtle has 3 other nests with 30, 40 eggs in each one, there's a good chance that some of those baby snappers are going to survive. So, yeah, the turtle reproductive rate and how many eggs do they lay really depends on the species. But generally speaking, the rarer and endangered species lay fewer eggs than the common ones, like our snappers or our painteds. You mentioned something earlier, Alison, about your coworker who had the cat that disappeared. That, I guess, for a long time, in fact, I remember my next door neighbor for years always talked about how she felt it was cruel to keep her cat inside when he wanted so badly to go out. Now, she had adopted him from a rescue group, and she had actually signed a contract saying, I will not let my cat go outside, but broke that rule and let him go outside. And he, oh my gosh, I think he ate crows, he ate squirrels. Something happened, his name was Leo, and I think what happened was a neighbor maybe got tired of him eating birds at their feeders. So they trapped him, and they drove him miles and miles away. And he did eventually make it back to the neighborhood, but he was you could tell he'd traveled a long way. His coat was all matted, his feet were all rough. And he just was never the same Leo after that. But, I always have wondered if they just made him comfortable inside, that all could have been avoided. Oh, another great question. Have we ever found fish that have been released? I haven't personally, but I know that happens, and that's another very common thing. People, they look at a fish lives outside. I'll just let my fish go. I'll give it its freedom. I know town of North Aurora, a little bit south of us. A fisherman caught a piranha. Or no, I think it was a pacu. It looks like a piranha, but somebody had let it go in the Fox River. We were doing a program. Oh gosh, this was a lovely fall day a few years ago. We were on a riverboat on the Fox River. We were chugging along and we were pointing out different types of birds and things that live along the river. And we started talking about osprey. Osprey are a pretty well-known fish-eating type of, like one of the nicknames for the osprey is the fish hawk. They eat almost exclusively fish. And somebody made a comment, gee, here we are on the Fox River. Fox River's full of fish. How cool would it be if you saw an osprey? Well, I kid you not, like 2 minutes later, an osprey comes flying along right over the boat. And in its talons, it's holding a big fish, big bright orange fish. It had captured, I don't know if it was a goldfish or a koi, but it caught a fish from the river that somebody had let go. And we know it came from osprey. Great blue herons, they're pretty notorious for fishing in people's backyard ponds. So if we'd seen a heron with a goldfish in its mouth, we could have pulled it out of a pond next to the river. But osprey only fish in the river, so we know that fish had been released and was there in the Fox River. And how did you become a naturalist? Well, I have always wanted to be a naturalist. But it wasn't the clear-cut path I thought it was going to be. I remember being in high school, telling my guidance counselor, that's what I want to do. And I was told at that time, and granted this was a few years ago, but my counselor said, that's not a job, that's a hobby. I remember looking through college catalogs, and there was no clear, naturalist career path outlined in the catalog. So I actually ended up going into a different field. I worked as a journalist for several years, but found 15 years or so into that career, I had some time for some volunteering. I volunteered at a nature center. And from there, I went and got a degree in outdoor education and have been doing this now for longer than I ever wrote about things. 15 years as a journalist and 20 years as a naturalist.
It's never too late.
No.
It's never too late to follow your dreams.
Well, and you, Allison, you've got probably if someone's looking at a career working in the outdoors, I think you have a pretty linear story you could share.
Yeah. I mean, I started off volunteering when I was really young at a local farm. They did a lot of ecology stuff too, so I got a little taste of that, and I just always loved being outside, and I really was passionate, or still am passionate about conservation and protecting and leaving things for the next generation to enjoy. And so I went to college for ecological restoration, but also I got a minor in wildlife biology because that's another one of my passions is wildlife. And it's not easy. The rewards are amazing, but it is pretty hard. But your office is basically the outdoors. I mean, yeah, you do have to do computer work and stuff, but the rewards are the views and making a difference in the world.
Well, yeah, knowing, especially your work with spotted owls, that's another great example of an endangered species that, I don't know, can you even say what's going on yet with their decline? Or?
It's a mixture of things. It's climate change. It's introduced, or the barred owl is competing with them. It's human-induced. There's just so many factors that we just don't know what exactly is impacting them. But it is impacting them, their behavior and their dispersal, and just more studies need to be done because we're also seeing that in many other species too. Well,
and I know it's tough too because a lot of people when they go to college, they want to graduate with a degree that's going to make them a ton of money.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot to be said though for what you were describing about having the pleasant working conditions and maybe you're not going to buy a yacht, but you're going to enjoy what you do and you're going to make a difference in the world because of it.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody knows the bear. Where did the bear come from? Well, the bear, and this specific animal was a donation to the Nature Center. I do not know what state it was taken in, but one of the other education missions we have here at Hickory Knolls is to let people know what used to live here in Illinois. And, I'm not going to say that it would be impossible to see a bear here again. There's a very large population of black bears in Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri. Most of our bordering states have bear populations. In fact, there was a kind of a famous bear that wandered down from Wisconsin a couple of summers ago. And that young male, remember that? And he kind of plodded around just a little bit, about a half hour west of here, and he visited bird feeders. He drank hummingbird nectar. He was probably looking for a territory that might, get him a mate. And when he didn't find that, he turned around and walked back up. And it was great. Nobody interfered with him. Nobody tried to harm him, capture him, anything like that, relocate him. But this bear it's one, we have a bear, we have a bison, we have a cougar. Our most recent addition is a muskox. These are all on display in our lobby, along with some educational signage that explains why they're there. All of those animals were once present in Illinois. And including the muskox. Now, muskox are not known to be anywhere around here these days, but back during the last ice age, they were the modern-day muskox that now lives in the Arctic Circle, was present in Illinois. There's fossil remnants that were found a little bit further downstate. So, to answer the question, this bear, again, we don't know for sure what state it came from, but we have it, and I think it's kind of unfortunate. I'm going to see if I can show you the whole body. They've got this sort of fierce-looking animal. It's showing his teeth, and he's got his paw out like he's getting ready to swat something. Black bear, and this is a black bear, but it's a cinnamon color black bear, so it looks kind of grizzly colored, but it's they're not large animals. And they spend a lot of their the warm weather months foraging. They're not eating people's pets. They're eating berries, roots. Yeah, lots of digging, honey. That whole Pooh Bear and the honey tree thing. They seem somewhat with that thick fur and everything. They can withstand a lot of stings without really feeling it, and they get the honey as a reward. So that's we thought he might make a suitable background today as we talked about things that are wild and not wild. What makes a pet? What doesn't make a good pet? If there aren't any other questions, I suppose we could say we appreciate your time. If anybody does have any questions in the future, I know some of you said you'd like copies of this PDF on how to disinfect and minimize the spread of fungus and virus in the wild. We'll certainly get those out to you, but that's it. We'll say so long and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time. Bye-bye.